Breaking the fourth wall is when the host acknowledges the presence of the audience or the camera. What up, potty people, and welcome back to Clipped. As always, I'm Eric, your host, and Clipped brings you podcast production tips, resources, industry insights, podcast education, and sometimes, just sometimes, conversations with my potty pals, all aimed to help you become a better, more efficient podcaster. I'm on a mission to help you start, grow, and monetize your show. And hey, in this episode, talking about something that might help you grow your show and connect more with your audience. It's funny because when you talk about growth, oftentimes people think that means like getting more listeners and growing and reaching more people. And it can, but I want to talk about growth as in like growing your connection with your audience. And so this episode is actually going to be about breaking the fourth wall. So I'm going to aim to answer several questions, or at least hit you with several insights about what breaking the fourth wall is, how it can help you grow your connection with your audience, and how it's going to allow your audience to learn more, to pause, to ponder, and ultimately feel loved, feel wanted, feel like you're actually talking to them, because that's what breaking the fourth wall is, and we'll get into that. But before we get into it, just want to give a shout out to this episode's sponsor, which is Riverside. If you're looking for a place to record high quality remote podcasts online, highly recommend Riverside. Been using it for years, maybe even the beginning. The first year it came out, I don't know, maybe like 2019 is when we started. But yeah, Riverside's great. Check it out. Great place to record remotely and get high quality video and audio. If you're new, enter promo code CLIPPED, the name of this show, CLIPPED, for 20% off. Okay, so what is breaking the fourth wall? You've probably heard that. You're probably like, what the hell is this? I knew a little bit about it, just from like being here in LA and growing up. My whole family worked in Hollywood. And so it's a theater term, film term, something like that, but it can also be used for podcasting. And breaking the fourth wall is when the host, if it's podcasting or if it's like a film or theater, the performer in that case, acknowledges the presence of the audience or the camera. In podcasting, it's when the host acknowledges the audience. You want to be strategic. It's not like everything they say, hey guys, you address the audience. That would be ridiculous. But I think when done strategically, it's going to allow you to connect deeper. It's going to give the audience information that they may have missed, because podcasts sometimes are like listened to passively. And so you might be in the car and maybe someone says like an interesting fact or a statistic, and you didn't catch it, but then the host is smart and they're like, hey, for our audience, could you repeat that? And then that dials in the audience. You're like, oh, this is great because I missed it. And now I have a chance to pause. And I think that's the big thing, is like the opportunity to pause and be like, okay, he's speaking to me or he's helping me out. And I'm going to take this moment to listen and feel just like that intimate connection, or feel wanted, feel like the host actually cares about me and is acknowledging my presence. So it can be really helpful in that sense. And there's one example that I want to use. And actually, I didn't even really think about it. My guest last week, first of all, if you haven't heard that episode, last week's episode 93 with Greg Wasserman, he's the head of partnerships and growth and community over at Cast Magic. He actually brought it up. I haven't seen the movie Deadpool, but apparently in that movie, one of the actors talks to the camera or talks to the audience. And then he also mentioned a good example, which is Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which classic movie, love that movie. And Ferris is always talking to the audience. He stops many, many times throughout the film and addresses the audience.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Okay, so here are some techniques and strategies of when you would do this. Again, you're not going to like do this all the time. Rhetorical questions are great for breaking the fourth wall or inviting the audience to ponder a thought. In education, if it's like an educational show where you're teaching somebody something, if that's like the niche that you're in, great easy way to do it with that type of content. But also, if you have a guest on, hey, could you tell the audience when your tour dates are? I listen to a lot of comedy shows, and so I did that. Or could you repeat that for the audience? Because I know our listeners are podcasters who are eager and hungry to grow their show. So if you could just give them that tip over again, they'd really appreciate it. Something like that. Or, hey, tell the audience where they can find you. And I'm kind of addressing the audience, and then the guest even gets the opportunity to, although they're talking to me, kind of talk to the audience and be like, hey guys, I'm stoked that I got to be on this show. If you want to learn more about my offerings, hit me up at blah, 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 xyz.com. Or I also want to highlight the importance of timing and context, which I have, but be authentic too. Don't just do it to do it because I've told you to do it right now. Think about when it might be a good time. And I promise you it'll come up naturally if you're thinking with the audience in mind, which you kind of always should be with your show, and you're practicing, and the more reps you do and the more interviews or the more solo casts, if you're always kind of keeping this in the back of your mind, it will come up naturally when you can break the fourth wall with the audience. And yeah, you want to maintain the flow of the podcast. And so while you are like pausing to reiterate or connect with the audience, you don't want to interrupt the moment. That naturalness that needs to come will come in time. But you have to be thinking about it, and I think it'll come out naturally. So that's really it for me today. Just wanted to highlight that breaking the fourth wall. And it was Greg Wasserman from last week's episode that really got me thinking about it more. And I think when we talk about podcast growth, like I mentioned at the top of the show, everyone's talking about getting more listeners and more outreach and, juicing up the numbers, getting more downloads, and then you can monetize and this and that. But if you focus on growth from like connecting with the existing audience that you have, I think you're going to be able to deepen relationships and grow those relationships. And I think that's a big part of growth too, is growing the connection you already have rather than trying to build 100 new connections from scratch. You've already got some people watching you and listening to you right now. And so break the fourth wall with them and get them involved. I think that's going to improve your content. And I think your audience is going to love it. So recommend you give it a try, experiment, try the several techniques of like rhetorical questions or reiterating a talking point. That's a good way to start. Be natural, guys. And the more you do it, it will come out more naturally. So that's it. My voice is a wreck in this episode, but it is all good. It's late. I'm getting it in. Got to get it in, guys. Thank you for listening. Head on over to thepodcasthaven.com. That's where you can find everything pertaining to the show notes, blog posts, educational resources, guides, tips, tricks, and more. That's thepodcasthaven.com. This is Clipped. I'm Eric Montgomery. Keep listening, keep engaging, and keep creating. I'm out.